Hello and welcome to the Free Associates. That's right, folks, the Free Associates, the freedom of association, the freedom to associate with anything, any idea that comes our way. Because why? Because freedom's good. We love freedom. However, my freedom may not be your freedom, but I believe if we can discuss it, we can work it out. We can share information along the way. And so perhaps forge a middle path through all this thicket and find each other a conversation about moving forward. Now, we are the Free Associates, and we are at the freeassociates.us. Here's the business card. I've shown it to you before, but I'm going to show it to you again because I can't hand it to you because I got them made right before COVID. So we're going to hang on to those post-COVID, but we'll get them to you for sure. Now, you can also like us on the Free Associates page on Facebook. That would be awesome. We would love that. And if you're listening on WMUA Amherst, thanks for listening in. This is a rebroadcast, and we do a Facebook Live every day. And then the next day, we pump it over to you guys over at UMass. We are not sitting at the base of that giant brutalist Soviet structure over there because you can't get in the building. Not yet, but boy, that's the one of those things I really look forward to. There's nothing like the hum of a radio station. It's magic. Waylon, you there, man?
I am here. What's good?
That's good. What's good? Your shirt's good.
Like that loud and bright. Loud and bright.
Yeah.
Spring is
good.
sprung.
I tried to put Waylon in a uniform, but I should never have said anything. I said, you look so good in that navy blue shirt. And he's like, don't control me.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
So I have my uniform, black jacket, white shirt. But Waylon, you're your own thing, man. You're an individual. You're hyper individual. So I'm not going to mess with you. And Waylon is manning all kinds of controls over there. And why don't we say hi to our special guest today, Robin Cody. Robin Cody, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah, you look like Yeah.
Thanks for having me on today, babe.
Oh, awesome. You look like you're in a Star Trek situation over there. I
know,
it.
It's pretty cool, right?
Really cool. It's really cool. Now, we have been doing a Politico series in the last, I guess about 7, 8 days, tackling one prediction at a time. The Politico reached out to a bunch of thinkers and said, well, and this was early on, I have to say, we've been a little hard on some of them, but I mean, it seems like some of them were written on the subway train a little bit. They were asked very quickly to respond. It typically tends to be in their wheelhouse. Why wouldn't it be? About what impact COVID's going to have moving forward. And that's what we're doing on this show. And so we've tackled patriotism, we've tackled polarization, we tackled hyper-individualism, the role of experts, and all of that can be found on our podcast if you want to back up, and also on YouTube now, because Waylon is a genius when it comes to creating broadcast television.
I don't know if I would say genius. It's been taking me like days to get this on YouTube. It's more of like you have something on the stove and you forget about it and you're gotta go check on it, and then all of a sudden you get distracted by another thing. I guess that's called ADD too. So
you trip over wires and stuff like that. But it's been cool, Waylon, because I've been seeing you reemerge because you've had so much stress like running this thing and with no one else. But now I feel like your personality is reasserting itself. Like
the first days I'm just like there's like 1,000 different buttons in front of me, it's like crazy stuff going on right now.
And I was being a little hard on you too, so it just looked like I was just browbeating you between you being like overwhelmed technologically and me like, hey, what's the problem over there? So I got a couple of responses, and I've been a much kinder person in the meantime. So now listen, let's get to what we're going to get to today. Waylon, do you want to throw that up there and you want me to read that?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so we're looking at, the name of this is More Restraints on Mass Consumption. And this is by Sonia Shah, the author of Pandemic, Tracking Contagions from Cholera to Ebola and Beyond, and the forthcoming, The Next Great Migration, The Beauty and Terror of Life on the Move. Wow, I'll say both of those books look worth reading. All right, she writes, in the best case scenario, the trauma of the pandemic will force society to accept restraints on mass consumer culture as a reasonable price to pay to defend ourselves against future contagions and climate disasters alike. For decades, we've sated our outsized appetites by encroaching on an ever-expanding swath of the planet with our industrial activities, forcing wild species to cram into remaining fragments of habitat in closer proximity to ours. That's what has allowed animal microbes such as SARS-CoV-2, not to mention hundreds of others from Ebola to Zika, to cross into human bodies, causing epidemics. Interesting, Zika, yeah. In theory, we could decide to shrink our industrial footprint and conserve wildlife habitat so that animal microbes stay in animal bodies instead. More likely, we'll see less direct relevant transformations. Universal basic income and mandatory paid sick leave will move from the margins to the center of policy debates. The end of mass quarantine will unleash pent-up demand for intimacy and a, wait for it, mini baby boom. The hype around online education will be abandoned as a generation of young people forced into seclusion will reshape the culture around a contrarian appreciation for communal life.
They're here.
Nice.
I guess so.
So I feel like this is very much a segmented piece, but who wants to tackle the first part? So let me just say, I feel like there's two things going on in this piece: pushing into the wildlife, which she seems to abandon really quickly, and then the other thing, which is about guaranteed income. So what do you guys think about the first part, where she's saying a lot of this contagion is coming because we're pushing into wildlife and that's going to have to stop? Robin, where are you at with that?
I have heard that before. I generally think that these sort of novel viruses, as they're called, and climate change is a product of ultimately mass consumerism. And pushing into wildlife, pushing pollutants into the air, and also this sort of frenzy of travel and sort of germ sharing. So just this sort of constant productivity and relentless activity has created kind of a frenzy of imbalance. So I'm with her on that. I mean, I've been rereading some of her work, and a question that came to my mind was, well, there was certain time in history where we were living with wildlife much closer, when we were nomadic tribes, I would think,
Oh, that's a good question.
But I think what she's talking about perhaps is, I don't know where that lies in the sort of the science of this, but I have heard, and it makes total sense, that animal microbes, because we're living in closer proximity, because we're squeezing them out, we're getting closer, that they're sort of jumping into our system. And I mean, I really love her vision of a post-COVID-19 world in which we do agree that, we're going to have to adjust our behavior. And I think we're already kind of doing that, being in quarantine. I think we're all kind of like, oh, hey, maybe I don't need to, spend my leisure time shopping, or, we're all doing plenty of consuming of media and of food, pretty much, but there's probably a lot of other things that we're not buying. So there is a lot of stuff.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. I'd be curious about the wildlife thing, because that's what Ebola is. Ebola is people who are much closer to the wild, who aren't kind of like jumping on planes or anything like that. And so it's much easier to contain because it's kind of like in these little villages. And so that other piece that you mentioned about relentless travel, I think that's perhaps what she would say. She would say, well, this is different because you have these big cities pushing into jungles and where there's wildlife. And then those people are traveling really far away. Waylon, what's your take on this as our resident globalist?
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, so this is one of the pieces of collateral damage when it comes to globalism. It's hard to escape. You can't have one without the other type thing. I don't think that people are going to be enlightened to the fact that there are damaging factors when it comes to globalism. I think that we're going to be continuing to want to, for instance, go shopping and consume, and the thing that might bridle those expectations and limit that and limit those interactions is the state of our economy right now. And so the long-lasting impact of the economy when it comes to this might actually have good consequences for the ecology of the world and just the environment. But just left to our own devices, if we have money, we're consumer not only a consumer nation but a consumer world, and we're
Okay.
going to interact there. It's looking. I think that one of the things that's going to happen is not a realization that we consume too much, but we actually might go more into the consumption of things, and that is the thinking critically about the stockpiling of PPE, personal protective equipment, and ventilators, and making things on a scale in which you can distribute those things to those in need quickly. So it might actually ramp up production as opposed to
Of some things.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Although I don't think that would compete with the mass consumption that we do otherwise. It is gratifying, my friend, to hear you talk that way, because we have been talking this way, that there's the COVID, and then there's the economic giant tail that's going to unleash post COVID. And so I think that they're kind of distinct and connected events. And so I agree with you that if there is a really big economic downturn, of course that brings travel down, that brings gas usage and power usage and all kinds of stuff down. So I think it's an astute observation.
I mean, yeah, there's also this whole economy business. I read a statistic that another 6 million people applied for unemployment.
6.6, crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And at the end of March, it was 6.6 as well. So I guess it's doubled or something like that. And so I'm sort of trying to understand the experience of what that's like for some of those folks. And I imagine that a lot of those people, because there's certain classes that are affected by this crisis much more than other classes. So these hourly workers, for example, are really affected. And I'm just sort of thinking, a lot of people, this is me, just imagining. I'm not trying to say that I really understand anyone's experience here, but, a lot of people really don't like their jobs. They're kind of, they don't like the job that they had, their hourly wage job, right? Yeah. And so now this crisis comes and everyone's panicked, rightfully so, but there's a huge, population of people who didn't like their job to begin with and now suddenly don't have a job, and they're in the same pool of people, 6 million other people, and they're thinking, wait a second here, maybe we could do something with this, get training. I mean, a lot of jobs, as we know, are being threatened by technology, AI, and all of this kind of stuff. So it's really like a pivotal moment potentially for some really systemic change to occur here, Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out because I do think that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think actually, we've talked about this, Norm, and the idea that that work is so ingrained into the fabric of people's beings that I was joking with a board of directors that I'm on, and people are like, "Yeah, we're just having a lot of this stuff is we're having meetings on Zoom just to have meetings, because if you have a meeting, then it's registered that you're doing work, And it's not that there's some productivity in this, but a lot of the stuff we shifted over to Zoom to create this idea that we're still being productive, but then how much of that, how much would go on if we still didn't meet on Zoom? There's this certain, so there's the psychology behind that people, one, might not like their job, or they're finding a real existential crisis in the impact that they have at their job. And then two, it's also shifting the goalposts on what your mentality is about the work that you are doing. So some people, working from home, they're like, oh, well, I can't believe I have to do that, which was their job when they were at the office. Their job was to do that, but now because of everything's kind of shifted and turned, it's a different story too. So there's a whole bunch of psychology going on with that as well. So
there's a lot. A lot of movement. One thing is, I know some of our students who don't typically like school are like, I can't wait to get back to school. I don't know if that's happening with workers too, because in some ways the alternative we've been giving is very isolating. So I can see it a couple of different ways. Also, I worry that the people who are hourly wage, I mean, listen, Robin, I think it's a really good point. It'd be a great time for a government program to step in for retraining. But if they're not given any kind of support, these are the last people who are going to be able to retool their lives because they're running on such a thin margin. I also think they'll be back to work in 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, that's my guess. This unemployment rate is not the same as '08. I think that business will come back. I think business will come back.
Well,
in
because the unemployment, I mean, it's skewed because it's furloughed and there's
Yes.
people are still linked to their jobs and everything. But I mean, it's unprecedented. The unemployment is one thing, but the getting out of debt is another thing.
Well, right, and we have so much. We've had so many warning signs along the way before COVID came. I mean, the car repossession rate is really high right now. That it has been high for years. Also, one of the big problems is the interest rate is so low already that it's going to be hard to stimulate the economy because you can't lower it anymore. And that's something that they should have been raising the interest rate over the last 8 years to get up to about 4.5 or 6%. So I agree with you that there's all kinds of stuff flying around for sure. Now, Raman, just quickly, don't you agree she totally gives up on going into the wildlife? I feel like there's a hopelessness in this paragraph where she says, it's almost like she's just writing this and then she's thinking oh, there's no way we're going to stop encroaching on the planet. So let me talk about guaranteed income and mandatory paid sick leave. Did anyone get that impression? She just seems to give up on it.
Well, I think I think what's happening there is she's basically saying if you're gonna poke the bear's gonna poke back. Yeah. Like if you're gonna you're pushing your boundaries. You're getting into you're coming into close proximity through the harvesting of different animals and livestock and living organisms. As you expand your human frontiers, you're going to have crises that spring up.
Okay.
So there's no solution.
The thing is that, it is true in history that the further you travel, the further you expand, you are exposing yourself to all sorts of bacteria and viruses that, you're not used to. I mean, this has been, and you've taught me a lot about this, Norm, but this has shaped so much of the course of history, maybe almost more than anything else, So here we are in the middle of this pandemic. And I don't know about you, but I'm not thinking about going to Africa right now. I was before the COVID-19. I was thinking about our sabbatical and traveling the world and exposing our children to all these different cultures. And really that was kind of how I was thinking about, how we would raise our kids. But I'm not thinking about that now. I'm really thinking about how do I make my life more meaningful here? I mean, I'm realizing, wait a second, I need to invest more in my friends. I need to invest more in my community. I need to learn how to grow food. I mean, that's what I'm really thinking about. And so I am really curious how I might be on one end of the spectrum. I don't think I'm on any end of the spectrum. I think I'm pretty in the middle, but there are some people, maybe Waylon, you're more like, this is just a little blip, and it's just a little nick in the sort of course of this globalism.
Well, let Waylon answer that. I think he's a good person to ask.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I love Aldi's, grocery shop there all the time, and I went to Aldi's, and so Aldi's, this was last week, and it was still ravaged. There's no meat, there's really nothing on the shelves, no leafy greens except the packaged Caesar salads that I get. I'm talking, everything is gone, and there's just my Caesar salad. I'm like, what's the deal?
I'll tell you what the deal is, and it's funny because my mom, she hasn't been in the store in 3 months. Yeah. She got a delivery from BJ's. She got ice cream because she loves ice cream and romaine lettuce. But that's the reason the Caesar salad is still there is because romaine lettuce has killed a number of people in this country. It's like a notorious bacterial leaf. So
yeah, well,
that's why you still get your Caesar
so I
salad.
do that. Then I go down the aisle for meat, and I get this this steak fajita meat. Again, everything is gone except my. I'm like.
So it's like you're like the one.
Yeah, I'm prepared for bottom scrounging. Like that is, I am a bottom feeder of the lowest quality, apparently, even in non-pandemics. But yeah.
Can I throw something in there? It's a great example. I just want to throw something that ties what you're saying to what Robin is saying. And Robin, I've talked to you about this a bit, but if you call someone an Epicurean these days, it means that they like fancy stuff. They like wine and good cheeses. But the original Greek Epicureans, their goal was to avoid pain, but they didn't avoid it by going to luxury. What they did is they made their life as simple as possible. They slept on the ground. They never ate anything with flavor. They only drank water. And so that paring down is one way to deal with disruption. So for you, it's Caesar salads and steak fajitas. For Robin, it's not traveling as much and investing in.
Well, is that your point, Waylon?
No, well, so to go back to my point, well, that was just a funny little anecdote. But to go back to my point, I'm of the mindset, and probably a lot of other individuals, is that I agree with you in the premise of like wanting a garden and wanting to understand how to better to grow food and everything, but I'm not forced to, and that's the biggest thing. I can still go into Aldi and I can still get that romaine lettuce, and I don't have to do it myself. And I think that, thank God, we haven't hit a point in the history of however we've been alive for, that we've had to ration or think so radically different from where we are. When I was cleaning out my grandmother's house, she died at 9. She died in her mid-90s. We were taking out boxes of Cool Whip containers filled with used tinfoil because she lived during the Great Depression, and those resources that stuck in her mind until the day she died. Was, we may hit a time where I need to reuse these resources that I have, and that's things that are lasting impression. I don't necessarily think that we're at that level with this.
Was she unhappy?
Was she on? No, not at all.
Okay, all right. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
It's relevant.
That plays into the Sebastian Junger and Tribe.
Yes, it does. Now, if anyone could raise a herd of cattle for steak fajitas, my friend, it is you. I think that you should be raising cows.
Gotta get some boots.
Yeah. Okay, so do you guys think, let's just go to this last point that she makes. And we've gone back and forth on this. I know Waylon's an advocate for it. Do we think that when we're kind of cleared, I don't know, blah, blah, blue. No, I don't want to say a date because half the world's going to get mad at me and the other half's going to love me. But imagine, okay, I'll throw a date on it. May 10th, my birthday. We get the clear to go back to school and stuff like that. Are we going to be running into each other's arms and dissing online education? Or because that's what she says. What do you guys think about that?
I think so. I don't know if we'll be running into each other's arms. I think people are still going to be spooked a little bit about getting so physically close. But I definitely think that this has shown us the value of being in person with each other. Before this happened, I was really keen on developing an online company, and I was going to teach, fitness classes online, and I still might, but the value of being in the room with somebody, I think we all maybe took for granted a little bit, and now I think that we'll take it less for granted. Now we'll probably, if it's May 10th where we go back, we might go back to our normal ways and get annoyed with each other, and which we will anyway. But yeah.
It'll be cool. It'll be cool to have that physical sensation again. If I walk into my third block with my 30 kids, I mean, you don't get more cram than my third block. 30 kids in this tiny room. I wonder if, almost biologically, I'll be like, whoa, I'm vibrating here. It's been 2 months since I've been around anyone but my direct family. And by the way, you say people aren't going to be running into each other's arms, but you're married. Okay, Waylon's going to be running into somebody's arms out there.
Well, yeah,
like at high speed.
Thank God we made the Free Associates dating app before all this happened.
Oh, that's right, guys. Just so you know, there's a Free Associates dating app. There's only one person on it. It's Waylon.
And you can't swipe no. You can only swipe yes. That's the other key component of this.
Right. That's right. And also unrelated, Waylon is offering. He does hot tub tours of his basement. Is that hot tub still running?
No, it's a pool now, Norm.
Oh,
when you don't heat it up, it just becomes a pool. So now I have a cool inflatable pool outside.
Okay. I'm glad that still will impact the humidity of the sill of your house. And we're hoping your landlord is watching Facebook Live right now so that they can go over and maybe check out what's going on with Waylon. I do think that there's some people who are not going to like get close to anyone real soon. And those are people mostly at risk. And you can imagine, Robin and I were talking last night, and Robin mentioned something really important. It's really important to have humility about this epidemic. When I heard that kids weren't getting it, I was just like, okay, I can wrap my head around this, but if you were to tell me kids were getting it, oh boy, that would be really, this whole experience would be so different for me. And so, I do have a mom. My mom is totally self-quarantined. And she's almost supposed to be 87, 88 right now, but that's important. If I thought my kids might get this whole experience of the last month and a half would be way, way more stressful. Yeah. So when you're out and people are paranoid about you, put yourself in their shoes and be like, well, that's how I would feel if it was my kids who might be getting sick. I might be yelling at people on the bike path or whatever it is too. So that's important to know. It's scary. It's actually scary.
Are people yelling at you on the bike path?
No, but I saw something that one of our friends posted. She has a really large family. So she was yelled at by someone because they thought there was a group gathering. But she just has a really large family. and really large, like 10 people. And, and she, to her credit, she was like, I kind of understood, I didn't like it, but I understood that this guy was frail. And this was frightening to him to see this group of people. So,
yeah, but he's also on the bike path. Like he's doing the exact same thing. I'm not saying that it's the same thing. It's like 10 people on a bike path versus one person on a bike path. But I mean, you gotta suss out the situation a little bit.
Well, if you can bring the music up, Waylon, I just want to say this: we are living in a time of really good people watching. If you go out. Because people are trying on new kinds of stuff. Like I took a bike ride on Saturday and I saw some pretty interesting outfits. I felt like there were some people like, I always wanted to be a juggalo. I always wanted to be an insane clown posse. And I saw like a teenager dressed as a juggalo. I'm like, this is the time to try that out.
Norm, don't give me ideas for my next wardrobe tomorrow, okay?
I know.
Don't give me ideas.
I saw also some like people exercising in ways I've never seen, and you could tell that they were out there like going like, and it was like, this is the time, you don't have to be self-conscious. There's hardly anyone out there. Go out and try it. All right, folks, we're so glad that you joined the Free Associates. We love having you on. If you're listening on WMUA Amherst, we're glad that you're listening. We do this on Facebook Live every weekday, and we'd love it if you'd like our page.
What time do you do it, Norm?
That's a good question. We do it at around 3 o'clock every afternoon, Facebook Live, and it's rebroadcasted the next day at noon. You can podcast all these episodes on every podcast platform in the world, and you can visit our website, thefreeassociates.us, if you want to check out the link. And Waylon has even got our YouTube channel. Although, Waylon, I noticed all the screenshots of every video was of you, so I have to go in and fix that.
That's the algorithm. The algorithm knows.
They get the good-looking guy on there. Is that right? All right. So that being said, Robin, what are you going to do with the rest of your day, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it's Friday, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to keep up. It's Friday.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it. Hey, good news, by the way, just on a separate note, they're going to do another episode of The Tiger King on this Sunday.
Oh, really?
Oh, let's go.
Well, I was thinking they really left us hanging with the Jeff narrative.
Jeff Lowe, yeah.
Jeff
And
Lowe.
so I actually think the federal government, like they're mandating Ford making ventilators, have mandated that the director of that documentary do another episode just to keep people inside for another couple days. Well, the sun's coming out, Robin, so maybe we'll go for a walk. Whale Dog, what are you doing, man?
I'm on the last stretch of the van. I got to do some painting in it. I'm gonna put the bed back in today, and yeah, got some research stuff to do. But yeah.
Did you paint the outside?
Not yet. It's coming though. I'm just trying to get everything that I can do myself, and then I'm gonna ship it out.
What color are you gonna go with?
I don't know. It's still up in the air. I'm taking suggestions.
Yeah, okay. He was thinking purple, but I think that's a mistake. But we'll see.
No, that's no promise.
It looks like Grimace,
Well,
it's like
Norm
Grimace.
tries to control what I wear too, so I probably will have to go purple to be the rebellious teenager's son that he needs right now.
All right, folks. Well, it's been so good to have Robin on the show, and the Whale Dog is my compadre in this adventure. I am the king of the stage freeze. So in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stage freeze.